The conversations and information provided are not intended to substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
The opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not reflect the view of Humana Military or the Department of Defense.
Welcome to the Operation Within podcast, where we talk about health and a deeper sense of well-being.
Operation Within is a collective initiative to optimize holistic health matters and nourish within community, within self, and within family.
Thank you for joining the conversation on Operation Within podcast. We are your hosts, Mel
and Marty, and our conversations are real, they're raw, and reflective.
These conversations offer meaningful dialogue on experiences within the military community, oriented to empower and strengthen health and vitality in our communities who serve.
We want to give a special thanks to Humana Military and our partners who have brought Operation Within to life.
Let's dive in. Welcome back to Operation Within. This is Melissa Aguirre, and I'm here with Sandy Morander. Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay, and you can cut that. Just making sure. Okay. As a leader who understands that the health of our community is vitally important to our future, Sandy provides the vision and leadership for the YMCA to be the top-of-mind, inclusive community connector that inspires a new movement towards holistic well-being. Sandy joined the YMCA of Greater San Antonio team as president and CEO in March 2011, bringing strength in programming and partnerships to fast-growing communities. With 12 branches, 1 healthy living center, 3 early learning centers, 1 resident camp, and 54 after-school sites throughout 5 counties, the Y connects, invites, and engages over 80,000 individuals a year to build stronger communities. I am so excited to have you here. This is such an honor, so needed, and such a beautiful way to bridge the need for community and connection. And I want to invite you to kind of share a little bit of your background.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here, and you are just a wonderful person to sit across the table and have a conversation with. So thanks for inviting me. On behalf of the Y, we are delighted to be at the table for this conversation. But me personally, you know, I was, I'm talking about a long time ago, but a college athlete and always thought I would stay in the world of physical activity. And the Y was that part-time job for me when I was in college, and I just never left it. It was always something new and exciting. I had great career advancement, great opportunities, great mentors, great bosses, and just have loved the work. And as it continues to evolve, even today, in the midst of a pandemic, I am still as charged up about the work as I was 37 years ago.
That's amazing. And I think, too, is like it's like that part of connecting with like-minded community, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we were talking about our roots. 1854, the Y was founded in Boston, Massachusetts. And it was framed on the 3 legs of a stool being spirit, mind, and body. And it's so relevant today, 175 plus years later, that we really need to continue to dig into. It takes all 3 to make sure you have whole person health. And that is what charges me up. Our communities desperately need it. There's so much inequity and access issues. And the Y is the one place where we can level set all of that.
Well, that is something, because I was sharing, it's like the concept or that stool of mind, body, and spirit. I think a lot of people don't realize the fullness of the mission with the Y and the understanding that it's not just about physical. It's not just about getting, having barbecues and getting together. It's like the fullness of the human, right? The spirit element and the connection and the interior stuff. So it's so needed, especially with everything going on.
And we were talking about mental health has become top of mind for so many people. And it's unfortunate it took a pandemic for this to be the topic of conversation. But you and I both know mental health has been an important part of full person health for a very long time. And so I welcome the conversation. And as an organization with national and international roots, we need to get better at making sure people know that is part of who we are. and making sure it's very integral in all that we do. And this pandemic has really lit a fire under us to make sure that that's forward-facing and very visible in all that we do.
I think the silver lining with that of what's been going on is recognizing that, we have a tendency to fragment our health. It's like, okay, mental health stuff stays over there. Community outreach stays over there. Fitness stays over here, but recognizing how they all work together, which ultimately, the word holistic, I think is kind of, it's like overutilized almost, right? Everybody's holistic. Everything's holistic. And it's like the trend. But if we really get to the earth of this, and since 1854, the Y has been saying this is, if you're going to serve people, you have to acknowledge that fullness. And the pandemic has brought the opportunity to the forefront for us to see that there's other aspects and domains that we can work with mental health. The importance of having your mental health provider, but things like mindfulness and movement and so on has also been shown to support as adjunct and potentially even provide that prevention aspect.
Absolutely. And we have been in the prevention business for a very long time. And in certain cases, the intervention work is just as important and becoming just as critical. And again, to use that inequity in communities, there are parts of our community that just don't have access to prevention, never mind intervention. And so the work that Within is doing, Operation Within, and the work that the YMCA is doing, we are reaching communities, whether that's military families and spouses or underserved communities, with access and tools to improve their whole person health.
What's great too with an organization like the Y, because I was able to share stories when we were at Bragg that we were connected to the Y, that as military families move around, that this is an organization that consistently provides these resources, especially the children programs, I think about the memberships to go exercise and all of those things. So this is definitely prevalent for military families.
And there's a great historical lesson in the partnership with the Department of Defense and the YMCA, and so many things that have happened in our rich history around military, YMCA, on the battlefield, in the formation of the USO, which you are familiar with. There's so much to this lifelong organization. And what I love about the connection to military families, we hear this for the people that we serve. The Y is the one consistent thing when they get relocated. They look up their local Y and walk in and say, well, at least this is something I know I can connect to and find community in. And so we represent that across the country, internationally, and it's something I'm super proud of here in San Antonio.
Well, it goes into what creates sustainable service, right? Like how do we, because there's so many things out there. There's so many resources. Marty and I have talked about it. This has been a common theme of that with so many resources, it can be daunting. But then you have resources who've been sustainable and consistent and are always accessible. And maybe if you can share as a leader in this organization and what you've witnessed of, versus these boilerplate, quick-paced programs that pop up, disappear. In your eyes as an organizational leader, what makes a sustainable program?
And you and I talked about this briefly, and thank you for asking that question, because I think the biggest thing that I've learned in San Antonio is collaboration and partnership is really the path forward. There is so much duplication, and if we haven't learned anything, it's that resources are so slim that duplicating effort and repeating what your neighbor is doing for the same people is just not a good use of time and talent. And so I encourage every entrepreneur out there to do their research, what's already out there in the world of what you're interested in, and how can you bring addition to that? How can you plus that? How can you come alongside that and manage to work within what's already created rather than create something new? I will say, as an organizational leader of what's considered a large nonprofit here in San Antonio, we were just as vulnerable as the small organization, and in some respects more vulnerable. We have very large overhead. We carry a lot of capital. We own a lot of buildings. We had a lot we had to try to maintain. And when the world shut down on March 19th, we had a lot that we still had to figure out how to cover. So it was a very scary time. Size, in this case, was not in our favor. So we did what I just advised, like lean into where there is need. What can we do? The number one thing we heard was childcare. Essential personnel still had to go to work, and schools and childcare centers were shutting down everywhere. And so we saw panic in families' faces, and how are they going to serve? And we said, we'll keep our daycare centers open. Whatever it takes, we'll do it. And so we did, and we opened 3 additional sites for families in need. And that work is still continuing today. And we did that on a wing and a prayer, that we said, even if you can't afford to pay for it, we're going to figure out how to serve you. So please just let us come alongside you. And then we had been a huge partner with the food bank, but what we heard is the food bank needed more community-based food opportunities. So we opened up 3 food distribution centers that are still operating today every week. So the need has not gone away, even though people are not seeing those big lines of food distribution centers. They're happening in communities all over San Antonio. And we did one just recently with your organization at our DR Sims location. So leaning into what we had, which was parking lots and great space and volunteers, how can we help? So entrepreneurship is using what you have, not duplicating what others are doing.
I think this is so key because for those listening, whether you are an innovator in your own workspace, an entrepreneur, I can say for myself, my success with my business is because I partner. It's because I look at the gifts that I have. And I think if you're listening to this, reflecting on the things that come natural, because I train people to become yoga teachers and do a lot of professional development work with people. And there's a technique I always guide people through, which is, asking yourself, what comes natural to you? What are you passionate about? And what skills have you learned that you're just good at? And those are going to give you big insight into your gifts. And then looking in the community of these organizations and what their needs are, because it does take a village. In this example of so we have this pandemic, people still got to go to work. You can't leave kids home. What do we do? And it's so important to be collaborative because we support one another and we can fill those gaps by coming together. Because I believe that from my experience, one organization and even me as an entrepreneur, it's I can't do it all. We do need to work together. And then that's how you collectively make impact, right?
Exactly. And that collection helps with marketing and communication, and connection is a great way of people knowing what you have to offer and sharing it. And that ripple effect, right? That's what you see every day. And I think it doesn't mean you can't be a leader and a boss and the CEO of your own company. Just look for opportunities to embed that with others. And I think both ends prosper.
Oh, for sure. And I think, too, is that there is this, as an organization and you give your service and time, the benefit of that is you reach people you might have not reached before, right?
Yeah. And we talked about this. There's so much about the why that people don't know. 1854, it's a long time, but we are still evolving. And even though we are a national organization, we're locally owned and operated. So every Y is an independent 501c3 organization, but we share commonalities. And one of those is our commitment to service of the military, spouses and families. And it makes the product that everyone gets across the country better because we all learn from each other, right? What works in Topeka, Kansas can work in San Antonio with our flair on it, right? So that opportunity to learn and grow together is really important, but also being true to the community you live and work in.
Yeah, I feel like that's the ultimate mastermind. It's you have all these hubs doing this and actually understanding, taking this information. And, if we, again, going back to the duplicating efforts, if you're just duplicating and then you're isolating yourself and you're not connecting and supporting and contributing or collaborating, you miss out on the shared information of how to be more effective, right?
Mm-hmm. absolutely. And we talk a lot about community, right? Our tagline is for youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. And that social responsibility is really how we show up in community and not stay isolated, how we share our gifts and resources with those who need us most and with those who can help us, like volunteers. And I know you're out there listening. We need volunteers. So
yeah, there's all, and we've talked about, Marty and I, about the benefit of volunteerism. And I don't know if you want to share anything on the benefits of that.
Yes, I think one of the great lessons from this pandemic is we realized one of the largest groups that was at risk was our seniors. We have a very large active older adult population, and they, rightly so, were very concerned, even as our bricks and mortar centers started reopening, about coming back in and being around other people, even with their masks on. And so that group really needed a virtual experience, and technology for a lot of people is a challenge. And so we were able to reactivate this very strong volunteer core that helps us sporadically in a lot of different things, to be the phone call once a week to a senior who was living in isolation pre-pandemic. You add the pandemic on top of it and the fear of going out. They just valued that personal call, conversation, and it's something every person can do, right? You commit to one phone call a week. You pick the time, you pick the day, you pick the number, and we just connect you with seniors. And we had every age group, every community represented, and lots of people who today are still helping us do that, because there are still people sitting at home in isolation who just need a friendly voice. But volunteerism, I think, is the best part. When you give, you get way more back. And if you go to our website, YMCA.org, there's plenty of opportunities from ongoing to a one-time, like Cyclovia that happened yesterday in Southtown. You could have volunteered for an hour or for the day just to help us greet those 30,000 bikers, walkers, and runners that joined us out in the streets yesterday. So volunteerism, everyone can do it. It's a great way to give, but you get way more back when you engage in community.
Well, even those phone calls, right?
Yes.
And, I think that there's something with connection and the word connection, again, this is another like holistic. It's like connection. What does this really mean? It's where we recognize the human in one another. It's that shared vulnerability of, yeah, I can relate to with my daughter's in kindergarten, and I just learned, I'm like, all my mom friends, no one told me about the car rider lines. Like, wait a second, and just laughing and connecting on how to use that time, what are ways to work it, and it just builds and fosters this trust of, and as simple and lighthearted as that is, I'm not going into deep personal things, but just laughing about motherhood and some of, the race of getting them out of the car out as quick as possible. It's just, you have this shared recognition.
Yeah.
And that builds trust. And I think trust is a very important part of community, because if we just show up and we just are in the doing and we just go home, there's this huge aspect that's missed, right? Versus the presence of, like, when you show up and being present in the experience and connecting.
And I don't know about you, but I was fortunate enough to have the option to work remotely. So my job never ended, but I was not in the office every day. And one of the biggest things that I recognized about myself was that I depend on personal interaction and the visual connection and being in other people's presence to have that connection. And it's something that is, for me, so critical to my mental health, is I need people to interact with and feel like a whole person operating on all cylinders. So I believe in that, and it was something that was highlighted during this pandemic. Although I can be productive and work in a home office, my preference is to be around others.
Well, it's in our nature. It's what's natural to us, and what an opportunity that if you are in a situation where you're not getting a lot of, interaction with people, you can come and volunteer and do different things to at least find a new way to build connection and laughter and, Presence is, there's something about the virtual, it's great. And I run a whole virtual studio, right? Like I do a lot of virtual stuff. However, what I have found is that there's something about the beingness that happens when you're with people and you're really connecting. I think it can happen on virtual for sure, because I've watched really powerful things happen on Zoom and with the work I do. But coming together as a group of people like-minded to serve a specific purpose, it just brings this vitality into people. And how volunteerism and this work, even through the pandemic, was something that never was lost. It's like, I think that the pandemic, and it's like when things shut down, but the things that just figured out how to continue, that it highlighted a lot of our nature. Like this is just human nature, right?
Yeah. And when I know that I'm stealing from your book, so I'm probably going to get it wrong, but when I think of presence, it's not only being in attendance with someone, but also recognizing the here and now, and stop worrying about the past and stop worrying about the future, and really embrace the opportunity you have today and in this moment. And I've seen great things happen when people can set aside disappointment and anxiety and just focus on the here and now. I think that's a gift of teaching people how to take a deep breath and lean in to the experience you have today.
Well, and I would bring that back to, that is part of our nature too. We just get so, you look at kids, I define presence as it's a mindfulness to what is meaningful right now. So what's meaningful right now is me sitting here with you and attending this moment and being with that. Or when my daughter snuggles up on my lap, like what's a mindfulness to what is meaningful? It's the smell of her and like the warmth of her and like being with her, right? Or if you're serving, it's what is meaningful. And when you look at kids and the way that they engage, they could stare at a piece of grass and ants moving around forever. And it's like, whoa, this world. Whereas as we grow, I feel we get conditioned out of this. Like it's a programming of, we have to perform, we have to get it done, we have to go, go, go. And that impacts our nervous system. So that when you look at, for all of us who are, as adults, wanting to get into mindfulness, wanting to practice presence, I believe the biggest issue that plagues us is that we are patterned to be it's a constant achieving. Like we are achievement oriented and don't know how we may want, but the body is so tailored to achieving that we forget that the process is really where the love and the meaning is found, right?
And we were talking about mindfulness as a great connection between our two organizations, and something we at the Y want to bring forth in a more intentional way. And it means different things to different people. And I challenge everyone out there to expand your thinking, try something new, read something new, and experience the joy of the moment and the stress reduction of being in the moment. I know it became a big part of my daily practice to not continue to stress about what's coming, but to do the best in the moment I have today.
Well, and the big illusion we fall under is that we have control on what's coming and control, or it really is. In the military, when I'm training mindfulness, we call it self-awareness. Sometimes we call it mindfulness training, but because of the mental access barriers around the word itself, mindfulness is that hippie stuff, or mindfulness is emptying your mind. And the reality, if you break down mindfulness, like the reality of the word is mindful, right? It's full of presence. Like it's not like you're not going to be empty. Like there's no emptiness in mindfulness. It's attending fully and wholeheartedly. And there's so many versions of it, so many versions. And I find that people will hear the word mindfulness and then they think it's this structured practice, but it's more of a state of being and the way that you engage in your life. I don't know if you want to share some of your experiences of how you brought mindfulness into your life. And
yeah, I think one of the things that I realized, so many lessons learned, but one that is really top of mind for me is the speed of business when you're working remotely is threefold of anything that we did before. I have more meetings before noontime than I did in a given day. So the speed of business for me was hard and fast for a very long time. And that exhaustion and stress has real physical impact. And so one of the things that I started to work on, rather than always giving other people advice, I started listening. And one of the things was creating a morning routine that included meditation and just time to sit quiet and listen and be present and mindful in a way that just slowed down everything, where 10 minutes a day, I'm not thinking about my to-do list, and it's hard. My mind still wants to be off on the checklist, but that's my challenge, is to learn to live in the moment and to take 10 minutes for myself every day. And then again, my roots in physical activity, I made sure that that became the priority again. There wasn't a day. I started in yoga pants, and sometimes at 6 p.m. I was still in yoga pants, but I was going to go out for my walk or run that day, one way or the other. So making physical movement a priority again, not too busy to make it happen, really changed the way that I feel like I was physically equipped to live up to the stress of every day in this ever-changing environment.
Absolutely. I love that you were able to identify that and I think a lot of people are identifying that in themselves. And one of the things that comes to the forefront of with mothers or parents at home with their kids, right, and trying to integrate movement or meditation. And one thing that I always suggest, because, and I'm the type of teacher, I'm not your here's the process, here's the structure. It's all about your own intuition and what feels right. But it could be just giving yourself permission to sit on your porch and enjoy and savor the sensations of your coffee or whatever you drink in the morning, or, sitting outside watching your dog in the backyard. Just if you feel that it's challenging just to, find that stillness, work with sensation, the sunlight on your body, the warmth of your mug. Check in with sensation, because part of presence is our attendance through the physical body, right? Mm-hmm. And so using sensory awareness, or if you can't get out to go walk, or you can't have your 20-minute, 1-hour yoga practice or fitness in the garage, how can you playfully move throughout your day? I mean, seriously, making pasta. Okay, you gotta let it sit for a second. I'm gonna do some random stretches, or I'm gonna dance with my 5-year-old, or
absolutely.
It's not. I think that the big shift that's happening in our perspective is before the pandemic. It was like, okay, from 5 to 6, I do this. Like, we were very structured in the achievement of like, I got to get my CrossFit in. And
yes,
now it's like, I just, I let the day, there's a little bit more lightness or invitation for lightness in how you engage with your wellness.
And you heard a lot more about 10 minutes at a time, right? If you can't block out an hour, can you do 5 minutes, right? Walk around the block. If that's all you can do it 3 times throughout the day. And I think we're giving ourselves permission to be more flexible and therefore more successful. If I can't carve out an hour, I might not ever get it done, but maybe I can do 10 minutes at a time.
Well, even that belief of like, I need this hour, I need to create more space in my day, I think we can sabotage ourselves simply by doing that.
Oh, we could talk on nauseum about that, right? As a mother with a young child, one of the things I'm so grateful for is that I had grown kids during this, because the challenges I faced just caring for myself, having to have young kids, moms and dads out there with young kids under your roof, you have been super challenged in the last year and a half. And the more you acknowledge that and embrace that and give yourself permission just to do the best you can every day, yeah, we could talk a lot about that.
Oh, yeah. And this is the big, even before the pandemic with my work with yoga therapy, when we were talking, the homework that I give people is, I'm not interested in you carving out 20 more minutes in your day or finding an hour. What I'm interested in is, what are you already doing? You shower, you drive, you do these things. So maybe when you drive, you listen to this podcast. Maybe when you shower, you put a few drops of lavender oil and you just breathe, or you give yourself the first 5 minutes of your shower to just be, right? So it doesn't have to be this complex rearrangement, but when you start little by little. And I love that you just said giving yourself permission to slow down and acknowledge, the we are so, again, driving on. This is very military, right? It's like we just push through it, but what we bypass builds up. Mm-hmm. And I think as a society and collectively, there's a big shift where more people are honoring the human, and that it's okay. Part of our regulation is to grieve. Yeah. It's okay to grieve. That it's different right now.
It's different. And you use the term, and we use it a lot in the Y, is trying to meet people where they're at, which is acknowledging that everyone is different. Everyone comes with a different set of standards, limitations, expectations. And we are only as good as we attune to what that individual needs in this moment. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not the same for every person in every community. And the more we acknowledge that in each other, the better off we're all going to be, knowing we are all similar, but we all have very, very individual needs.
Well, and the different paths and all the things that make you you today is so different than my experiences, right? Mm-hmm. And really honoring the fullness of each individual. And that's like with the mental health stuff, getting rid of these stigmas and recognizing that, when you look at the data around depression, what is it, like $80 billion a year goes to depression? It's crazy the amount of money spent for this stuff. And then you look at the data, it's like, oh, like if this many people are navigating, I'm not alone. Probably half my neighborhood, because if you do the numbers, it's like, wow.
And I would challenge anyone in today's society to find someone who isn't dealing with something on the mental health spectrum, right? And the fact that we are talking about it more and providing resources and tools, the more people are going to realize there is a community of similar experiences out there that we can all benefit from. And if you're one of the few that's not, you still need to be in the prevention mode to make sure that what good mental health you have going for you, you're able to maintain. And your organization talks about well days instead of sick days, and giving employees and families the opportunity to say, you know what, I am feeling good today, but I want to invest in a day for myself. I want to make sure I'm taking care of myself, and maybe that's not going to work for the day. Instead of waiting until I'm sick and can't do anything, I'm going to take some time for myself.
It's so important. And this mirrors that, like, focusing on what's right with people. And I feel that the YMCA really does that. It's like, hey, we have these experiences. These opportunities for people to engage and optimize what is right with you. Because everybody has, you are constantly being identified as, this is wrong with me, this is wrong with me. We fall into these mental traps around that, right?
Yeah. And the flip that we like to use is creating the best version of yourself. Mm-hmm. So wherever you're starting at, it is fantastic. You're great. There's so much you can offer the world, but is there more, right? How, as an organization, spirit, mind, and body, can we challenge you to become even better, a better version of yourself? And what is the priority for you? Is it physical strength? Is it mindfulness? Is it educational attainment? What is it for you that you are most important and most focused on in this moment? And how can we come alongside you and help you?
Well, and even just the soundboarding, to go and have a conversation on, what you're looking for, that can give so much insight.
Yeah, I tell people this story a lot when I was in the branch operations and giving tours to prospective members. And one of my favorite questions was, what's most important to you? What would you like to accomplish? If you had one dream, what would it be? And I remember touring a mom with 3 young kids. And I said, what would a perfect day for you be? And she's like, perfect day. Just give me 1 hour to be able to read a book without interruption. And I'm like, well, if you come here, your kids can be in program and kids club and entertained, and you don't have to be with them, and you could sit in our lobby and you could read a book for an hour. And I saw her about 3 months later, and she said, 3 days a week now, I am living my dream. I get 3 hours to sit and do just what I said I wanted to do, read a book. And people forget, right? It's creating the life you want in a space that we help facilitate.
I love that story. That is so beautiful because it mirrors that, it's not what's the matter with you, but what matters to you. And I think that as organizations, if we can work on the side of, okay, well, yes, these metrics exist. We have these issues, but what matters to people? Because when we optimize more meaning, more presence, more laughter, it's such a huge catalyst for healing.
Yeah, and I want to do a shout out for anyone that's listening to this. There is a connection for you at the Y, whether that's you as a member, you as a volunteer, you as an entrepreneur who has a great idea that you want us to share in and learn from and be a part of. Come check us out. We've got something for you, and there is a community waiting for you inside our organization.
That's amazing. And I love that the Y has so much dynamic. And I think it goes back to when we were talking about what makes programs sustainable. Mm-hmm. It's that you do foster multiple elements that create an invitational experience for people where they can find themselves in it. It's not that they have to become what the mission is, but the mission is open to the unique walks of life.
Absolutely. And there is something for everyone. We serve all ages. We're all over all parts of San Antonio and New Braunfels and Bernie and Schertz and Cibolo. So lots of community outreach going on.
Well, and also we're so grateful to be hosting our food distributions with you guys. And that's such a powerful way to get involved as well, especially with the military side. Is there other experiences or services specifically for the military community that maybe you want to share with our...
Yeah. First and foremost, all of our programs are on a sliding fee scale. So if folks are in a position where it is financially hard for them to enroll in a program because of the fees attached, you should know that there is financial assistance available to make everything affordable and accessible to you and your family. So anything you see on our website that you want to participate in, don't hesitate to ask for help. That's what we're here for. And second, I think we are learning from the families that we're connecting with, specifically in our OP Schnabel community. There's a group of homeschooler moms from military families who wanted their own physical education program. So a program within a program that they set up their own community, and we're facilitating space for that to happen. We've learned around community conversation and Bible study opportunities. We've had yoga programs specifically for PTSD. We have at our DR Sims location modified equipment for folks who have physical limitations that need augmenting in our physical weight equipment area. We are really pushing ourselves to be as accessible for wheelchairs in every part of our building. Some of them are older than others, but we're working hard to make sure that that's available. And then childcare, again, becomes a major issue for a lot of military families in terms of first and second shift requirements. So we're trying to find creative ways to fill that gap as well. So I would say we learn from you, and we are adapting and creating alongside of you. But most importantly, we want to make sure there is access to programs.
Huge. I think that's like the number one thing, especially with military families, is with access with the kids, right? How can we've done things where it's like, we're just going to do family yoga because childcare is not accessible. So we open up the classes for families, but the problem, the reality is when you have a 3-year-old running around and, it's a challenge, right? Yeah. And that inclusivity and the accessibility is so important. So it's amazing that you guys have that because, it's like, as you're interested in diving deeper into your self-care and deeper into wellness, I think that a lot of things like that can be the access barrier. And I know even for myself as a mom, I struggle sometimes where I'm like, if only it was just quiet. If only I could just, luxuriate here and not get up. And I've really learned to include my daughter. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think as children grow, they'll remember that, oh yeah, my mom was devoted, or like she used to go to the Y. We did this every, Tuesday, Thursday at the Y, and I played, and then eventually I got old enough and I got to participate. Or it helps when we talk about healthy communities, it's also healthy families, and families that are doing these things together, and that it doesn't have to be isolated, right? And that is there ways that the kids can be involved, or even if you're rolling out your mat at home, and if the little ones start, playing on your feet while you're practicing, let that be your spiritual teacher. Yeah. That it's, okay, so I want peace, but this is what's happening now. How can I co-create with the present? Okay, I'm going to laugh with them. I'm going to tickle them. I'm still going to do Warrior 2, but when I forward fold, I'm going to give them a kiss. It's like, that's what co-creation is. Mm-hmm. And so there's so many ways to get into this work and experience wellness, even with the barriers, right? It's like, but a lot of them are mental in a way too.
And I can just imagine you lit up a bunch of moms and dads of the world with saying that co-create, because for so many of us, that could have been the point of frustration, and I'm not getting to do what I thought I was going to do. And if we can take a breath and co-create a new experience, given what is happening in the moment, everyone benefits, right? And I think when you talk about family programming, creating space to share just that you might have started off thinking you were going to do an hour practice by yourself, but your child had a different thought. And rather than stay in the world of I don't get to, focus on what I do get to. And having a conversation and helping parents lean into that as a positive experience really does change the world of that child, right? They experience a loving parent in the moment, not a frustrated, I did something wrong moment.
Well, and then they're learning from you because you're embodying it in so many ways. And I think the other benefit is when we can reframe the barriers as teachers. This is how you train your nervous system out of victimhood and reactivity. It's like, okay, for example, you're driving and then the construction, right? And now you're going to be late. And you can go in the negative feedback loop of you're a failure, you're not good enough, now you're going to not be on time, and this whole ordeal. Or you can use your breath, down regulate, trust, contact who you need to contact, offer yourself grace and know that they're going to offer grace, right? And it's like, that's how we rewire our nervous system. And same with our kiddos, or if the dog has an accident, it's like, these are our teachers, and that all these challenges or barriers that show up are the opportunity to renegotiate our reality.
Oh, that is so powerful. And for somebody who was not always good at that, I so appreciate that lesson and wish more people hear it sooner in their lives, to be able to lean into that and benefit from that, not only for their own sake, but for those around them.
It's so funny because that first was inspired to me and I think for military spouses out there, every marriage goes through up and downs, and I was going through a tough time with my husband, and I went and saw one of my teachers, and I was kind of going on and complaining and like, I don't know. And she put me in my place in the sense of like, well, but don't you do these things? And he's your spiritual teacher. Like when she was like reframed it to him being my spiritual teacher, that changed the whole dynamic, where I started looking at myself and looking at how I offer compassion to myself. How do I give grace to myself? And every time it's like the resistance starts to happen, I can see, oh, he's teaching me. He doesn't realize it, but this is teaching me to be patient. This is teaching me to understand a different perspective. This is teaching me to be okay with being different, right? Or, that everything the world doesn't have to always look the way I want it to look. But I can still be my authentic self, even though people are different outside of me, right? Like there's so many lessons when we start to look at not just our partners, but whether it's business colleagues or friends or, other people in our life, that we're all, in a sense, teachers for one another.
Absolutely. And that is a great message for everyone to hear. And, you'll compartmentalize it in a way that makes sense to you. But what I hear is this connection, where we started, connectivity really is where we learn and grow together.
It's huge. Yeah. Well, this has been such a beautiful conversation, and having you guys here, especially highlighting the mind, body, spirit aspect of the why. And for those listening, that check out what the closest why is to you, and see what ways you can get involved or be supported. Right? There's this beautiful benefit of both. So I don't know, before we close, if there's anything else you want to share.
Just thank you for the work that you're doing. It is amazing. Check out their website as well. The amazing opportunity to be here and share what the Y is doing, and to be in community and connected to you. I know it's not the end of our conversation. So connect with us. We'd love to have you. Check out our website, YMCA.satx.org. And if there's anything we can do to make your world a better place, just let us know.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.